Here's the thing with John F. Kennedy. Multiple factions wanted him dead. The mafia, the CIA, and Israel runs our foreign policy. Epstein was a spy for Israel. We have a serious censorship problem in the United States. All these tech guys are frauds. Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they're all...
What it is, Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs. Today in the studio, folks, got a real treat for you. As always, today's guest, Myron Gaines, in the house.
What's up, Brad? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming here, buddy. I've been watching you on social media for a minute or two. I see your clips. I know you got a big podcast, Fresh and Fit. For you guys who don't know, Fresh and Fit, go check it out. It's a podcast, talks about dating, relationships, businesses.
Yeah, overall male self-improvement.
Finance.
Yep.
When you say male self-improvement, we don't talk about ladies.
Well, if women listen to what I say, it would definitely help them. But a lot of women don't like our message because we keep it very raw and authentic. And with women, the way you deliver information a lot of times matters more than the information itself. It's one of the unique differences I've noticed between speaking with women versus speaking with men.
Is that a general statement?
Yeah.
It's not all women,
not
obviously.
Always, of course. You know, some women are able to, hear things that might seem crass and be able to take the good information from it. But what I've noticed, we've interviewed almost 3,500 girls now, or a little over 3,500, closing in on 4K. And one of the things that I've noticed with talking with all these women from different backgrounds, education levels, religions, upbringings, the way you convey information, it tends to be the most important thing when it comes to communication for them versus the content of the information. When I'm talking with guys, like on our call-in show, I'll literally berate them and say, you're a fat piece of shit, you're a loser, you got to stop doing this. And they'll take the information pretty well, right? Because they look at it like, okay, this is a guy I aspire to be like, I will take this delivery. But with women, they don't like that. Like no matter how qualified you are, like they don't look at meritocracy the same way that men do. And it's one of the fascinating things I've noticed from speaking with women versus men.
Now, how did you get into podcasting?
So first, I guess we'll go backwards a little bit. So I used to be a special agent with Homeland Security investigations. I did criminal investigations for 10 years. And while I was doing that, what ended up happening was I started a fitness business on the side as I was doing the government gig. And what I noticed was guys want to get in shape, but they also needed help with getting girls. And at the time I was in Miami, Florida. I had just moved here in 2018 from Laredo, Texas. And I was like, well, I'm doing pretty well with the ladies here in Miami. Let me get, because a lot of these guys would call for consults and everything else like that. And I said, you know what, if I want to reach more people, because I was helping a lot of guys out, I was like, I need to get on YouTube, right? Because YouTube's also a search engine because Google owns it. So I get on YouTube, I make a YouTube channel. I end up meeting my buddy Fresh through an intermediary friend. And what happened from there was we did an episode where we talked about dating in Miami and people loved it. So we realized that, hey, this is something that people like. Obviously, the fitness is important as well because you need to get in shape and actually be sexually arousing to these women nowadays. But that's how we kind of combined forces and we started the podcast. And yeah, the rest is history.
Then it just went hog wild?
Yeah, I mean, we were doing pretty well in the beginning. And then, we just started to take off. And because there's not many podcasts that like tell guys the truth when it comes to dating and relationships and how to deal with modern women. A lot of stuff is like very cookie cutter or politically correct, and we keep it pretty raw on what it takes to be attractive in, the modern age.
Well, not to keep people from watching your podcast, because I think people should just go check it out. And by the way, Fresh and Fit on YouTube, guys. I'm sure you've heard of it, and if you haven't, you've seen the clips.
Yep. And Rumble too.
And Rumble.
That's one of our main
You think anyone gets on Rumble still?
Yeah, there's a lot of...
I thought that would take off big when it came out because it's like more free speech.
Yeah.
But every time I go there, there's nobody there.
Yeah, no, they got a lot of big creators, man. They just got Dr. Disrespect. They got Dan Bongino, Steven Crowder.
Only exclusively?
Bongino's over there exclusively. Crowder's pretty much damn near exclusive now. Timcast just moved over.
So there's nowhere else?
Timcast or
no? Yeah. I mean, in other words, when you say moved over, like
so he just got in with Rumble, like
so no longer recently. On YouTube.
He's still on YouTube, but he's migrating his audience. So he's like dual streaming it now, and then I'm assuming he'll probably start to slowly migrate them over because you got to kind of do it, because people a lot of times if they're used to watching you on YouTube, they don't want to go to another platform, so you kind of have to like slowly move them over, and that's what we've been able to do, thankfully. But yeah, like Bongino's exclusively on there. He just got the gig with Deputy Director of the FBI, so congratulations to him.
Big congratulations, and thank God.
Yeah, they need some help, man.
Dude, that guy's gonna do some damage, just like Kash Patel. Like, dude, we're finally getting some real people in there.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was former Secret Service. I was former HSI. So I sent him a text. I said, hey, man, from one 1811 to another, congrats. You know, people are trying to, you know, oh, well, he's a Secret Service agent. He was never an FBI agent. Look, I don't think that matters as much as like just keeping people on task, getting them what they need. Because once you're at the director level, it's a ceremonial position where you're kind of like, you know, overseeing what's going on. You're reporting directly to the president. You're making sure people get what they need to get their jobs done. I think that's what matters, and I think they'll do a great job. But yeah, no, it's growing a lot, man.
Because I got an email from someone at Rumble, and I'm like, from Rumble? He's like, yeah, I'm from Rumble. He said he talking about, hey man, let's get a show going with. I'm like, I looked at their back office, their back software. And I'm like, dude, this is good software. Like I could go live on this and pull up viewers or callers. And I'm like, why don't I just go on a Rumble? So I tried it once, and then like 2 people were there. Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, dude, like, doesn't it share with everybody on Rumble?
Yeah. So and that's the importance of like kind of like moving your audience over, because like the thing with Rumble is free speech, right? Which is why I love it. That's why we're, you know, so loyal to them, because Chris Pavlovsky is awesome. I genuinely believe that him and Elon Musk were critical in getting Trump into office, because we know that YouTube has a habit of suppressing conservative creators, whether it be demonetized, shadow banned, whatever. Almost every big conservative creator I know has dealt with censorship to some degree on YouTube. So Rumble kind of alleviates that problem. So it's been growing quite a bit. And they're getting some pretty big names over there. So I think that's going to be the future, man, because people are tired of the censorship, man. They really are.
That's a fact.
And it's really annoying. So all the top political conservative creators are over there on Rumble for sure.
What was your take on the vaccine when it was big and new from day one?
Bullshit, 100%. I never wore a mask, never got the jab. You know, if I had to wear a mask to go in a store or whatever, it was annoying, but yeah, I'd take it off as soon as I got out. It was BS. Yeah, complete BS.
Because my position from day one is no. And now everybody's like, see, dude, you were calling it. And I'm like, dude, there was a lot of us calling it. It's just we weren't being heard because these platforms were shutting it down.
Yeah.
And it's like there was a lot of people. I know a lot of people that didn't fall for that shit.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other interesting thing is like now they're kind of like backpedaling on the vaccine, right? They give Fauci a pardon, a preemptive pardon. You know, Trump signed an executive order where they're not going to mandate it anymore in the military, and people that did get fired are able to get their jobs back with some back pay, which is awesome. But it was bullshit, man. It was complete bullshit. And the thing that kills me the most is how many people's businesses were ruined, how many people lost their livelihoods, how many people got censored or banned off of YouTube. Because I remember used to be you would get a strike a lot of the times if you said anything that was against the vaccine or COVID. So under misinformation, which nowadays misinformation is nothing more than knowing what's going to happen before it happens. So the vaccine is problematic. And then when you look at the people that were the architects of the vaccine, whether it's Fauci, Rachel Walensky, I think was the head of the CDC at the time, losers like Albert Bourla, like the head of Pfizer, it was a scam, man. The whole thing was a scam to see population control.
Was Fresh and Fit going at the time?
Yeah, we started, our first podcast was October 26, 2020.
So were you talking about it or keeping it quiet?
Oh no, we were saying it was bullshit back then too.
I'm surprised you even made it then.
Yeah. So what we would do is we would use code words. We used to call it the beer bug.
Yeah, well, you remember a guy by the name of Dr. Rashid Buttar?
No, I'm not familiar with that name.
He was on my show. He was one of the first doctors said this is total bullshit. I put him on the show. We're sitting here talking about it back and forth. Ended up being a good dude. Posted it on YouTube.
They took it down.
Dude, in 2 days it had over 2 million views. And boom, next thing you know, someone goes, where's the video? I said, what do you mean? They just took it down. They just deleted it.
Yep. And they give you a strike too. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, they didn't shut off my channel, but they deleted his ass.
Yeah.
And then
3 strikes, I think. Now they have a new rule, but like if you get 3 strikes, you get banned. But within 90 days, if I'm not mistaken. But it's ridiculous, dude. It's absolutely ridiculous.
You would think that these people would just say what you want. You know, unless it's obvious, like problematic lies or, you know, defamation. But even then, like if it was my platform, say what you want. You can always change the channel. You can always unsubscribe. You can just keep scrolling. I mean, I've seen some messed up videos on YouTube before. I've been scrolling on Instagram and saw like chicks that like real quick flash their shit.
Yeah.
And I, you know, fall for it. I want to stop it to see if I can see what it is, if they're really flashing, and they're really flashing. And I'm like, dude, see, why are they allowing that? But they're not, it doesn't make sense. And then
they'll censor political speech, but they'll let girls be full on 304s on, you know, the internet. It's absolutely ridiculous.
What's a 304?
Oh, a hoe. Because if you get a calculator and you type in 304 and flip the calculator upside down, it's hoe.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Yeah, see, I'm an old man, but and child trafficking, like pedophile shit.
Sure.
Like, dude,
Epstein.
When you're saying, hey, this guy's a pedophile, they'll like shut it down almost like they're protecting pedophiles.
Well, they just took a channel down that was going after people and arresting them, like the whole catch a predator thing. YouTube now like has a thing like vigilante videos get taken down. They took one of my videos down. I was out in California with Vitaly, and we were catching predators. I was live streaming it, and a couple months after the fact, they took it down, and I got a warning, but they took it down. If it weren't with the new terms of service, I probably would have gotten a strike. And they said vigilante behavior is not allowed on YouTube. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like,
if you read the community guidelines, because I've never honestly read them.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody has.
But if you read them, will it point out things you really can't do? Because I always tell my guys, listen, if it's a violation, I won't do it. I'll try not to. Mm-hmm. But I hear Gary Vee say fuck all the time. And every time I say fuck, my team's like, bleeps it out. They'll shut you down. I'm like, why don't they shut him down?
Well, the problem is, and this isn't just with YouTube, but this is with all the main platforms, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, the whole Meta situation, like all these platforms, they purposely write the community guidelines in an ambiguous manner so they can selectively enforce it whenever they want, right? So, and this is why I love Rumble so much, because Rumble really stands on free speech. Like, they've lost access in certain countries because the government, like Brazil, for example, hey, we want you to ban this creator. And, Chris Pavlovsky literally tells them like, no, pound sand. And they would rather pull out of a country than ban a creator, which is like, I have an enormous amount of respect for that, because, these other platforms, they bend the knee because they want the advertisers, they want the ability to be in these certain countries or be in these areas. And that's how censorship works in other countries. So censorship works. The way it works in other countries is the government will send like a letter saying, hey, we want this person gone, right? And then a lot of the times these companies we'll comply because we don't want to deal with the ramifications of dealing with the government. Chris says go pound sand. But in America, the way they do it is you have these organizations like the SPLC and the ADL, et cetera. And what they'll do is they'll write a hit piece on you, or Media Matters is another one. There's a bunch of them, but those are like the top three. They'll write a hit piece on you saying, oh, this person's racist, this person's misogynistic, this guy's anti-Semitic. And they'll go ahead and make that hit piece, call up the platform that you're on, and they'll be like, hey, are you aware that this individual's on your platform monetized and talking about XYZ? And they put an enormous amount of pressure on these platforms to censor, demonetize, or maybe even remove that creator from the platform at the threat of ads. So that is how the censorship regime works in America, and that's how they kind of get around the First Amendment, is they lobby with these censorship, radical, typically left-wing censorship groups, and it's a problem. It's extremely problematic. And then you got some situations the government does it, right? Where, like I gave you the example before, where Congress literally wrote a paper on red pill content or male self-improvement content, calling it like hateful, extreme hate content. And they put like me, Sneeko, Pearl, Andrew Tate, etc. And, some of us got banned or demonetized or shadow banned. And that is literally the government working with a big tech company to censor American citizens. And that's precisely what Donald Trump signed against on his first day in office with the executive order. So I hope it, moves through and no district judge blocks it. But the point of the matter is we have a serious censorship problem in the United States. Our forefathers did not traverse the Atlantic Ocean through scurvy and wooden boats and dying so that we can go ahead and be censored and do the same exact crap that led to the downfall of the United Kingdom.
Especially when it comes to male improvement or male personal development, whatever you called it.
Yeah, it's, anything that's pro-male is censored. And I do think there's a reason for that. Women simply are the consumer base. They control, 3/4 of the day, and they're 80% of the consumer base. So advertisers are always going to have a more femme-centric way of looking at things. I'll give a perfect example. There was a Gillette commercial, very famous back in, I think, 2019 or 2020, where they went after toxic masculinity. That's what ended up making that like a thing, like a toxic masculine or insecure, whatever. And this ad obviously got a lot of backlash, rightfully so, because it's like, okay, you're ostracizing your customer base, which is men. This is a men razor company, to go woke. And people boycotted and they lost a lot of money, which is fantastic. I see that people are bucking back at this politically correct society that we have right now with the Marvel movies, making traditional heroes that were men, women now, or they're trying to make things woke on Netflix with all these interracial couples or trying to push an agenda. And people are fighting back against it, and I'm glad. And I think Donald Trump winning the presidency is an outward manifestation of America's frustration with the censorship, the political correctness, the DEI, the affirmative action. It's all fucking bullshit, and we're tired of it, really. So that's why I love Rumble so much, because they're one of the platforms that still allow that to happen versus, YouTube and Meta, whatever. Because Zuckerberg, oh yeah, we're going to allow more freedom of expression. We're still getting banned. Like, I got my Instagram banned yesterday, so he's full of it. And he's always been a pussy. So yeah, big tech censorship is a big problem. And it got so bad that even the government was colluding with these companies to censor American citizens.
Now, Zuck said he was going to do no more censoring.
He did say that.
And I believed it, but again, my team tells me, dude, you can't say fuck. And I'm like, dude, that's just a word, bro. Like, there's so much more worse stuff. If someone is offended, why wouldn't they just keep scrolling? I thought Zuck wasn't going to do that. They said the same thing you did. Oh, he's still doing it.
Yeah.
So I assumed, because he started to get into jujitsu, that he was getting some more testosterone and he was starting to, be more of a man or a man's man instead of like a, kind of a nerdy guy. In the very beginning, when I was watching him, especially in Congress when he was testifying, he almost looked like he was not even a human being.
Yeah, and look, so here's the thing with Zuckerberg, saying this freedom of expression. Okay, this is going to be controversial. I'm going to say it. All these tech guys are frauds. Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, David Sachs, like all these guys are frauds. None of them are conservatives. They're all liberals. They all voted for Hillary in 2016 and probably Biden in 2020. They rallied around Trump because after he got shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, and he survived, it was pretty much, a shoo-in that he was going to win the presidency. He took that epic photo, fight. He reacted, in a very brave manner in a time of peril. And that's when Elon Musk started to support him. So they understand, okay, he's going to be the president. Let's go ahead and rally around him. And that's why I think they started to support him when it was almost inevitable. That's why they were there at the inauguration and they did what they did. Because don't forget, after January 6th, all these tech losers censored Trump. They banned him off everything. I'll never forget, they banned him off YouTube, Twitter. Literally, he was gone everywhere after January 6th. So they tried to destroy him.
Before January 6th.
Yeah.
He was banned as the president of the United States.
Yeah, a couple of days after January 6th, they banned him. But the other thing too also is that not only did they ban him, but that's why True Social popped off. He couldn't even have a platform to tell his side of the story. And then what happens? All these indictments come. He gets indicted in New York, gets indicted in Washington, D.C. by deranged Jack Smith, gets indicted in Southern District of Florida for the classified document case, gets indicted in Georgia by fat ass Fannie Willis, for Rico and Giuliani. So they went after him and they censored him everywhere and they thought that they'd be able to destroy him. He ended up winning, which is awesome. I think it's one of the greatest comebacks ever. But it's problematic. These big tech guys literally wouldn't have given a shit if he didn't win the election, and he probably would be in prison. So Zuckerberg and these guys are it's all self-preservation. They're getting in, and the way they got in was through JD Vance. JD Vance has all the tech connections. Peter Thiel, all these guys, Alex Karp from Palantir. JD Vance brought these guys in. And brought the money. Trump needed the money because he was being sued. He was getting charged criminally. So he needed the donations. To run a campaign is extremely expensive. So that's kind of how big tech weaseled their way in. They weaseled their way in through JD Vance.
Well, do you believe that elections to run should be expensive?
That's a bit mixed because what ends up happening is you end up getting... I could see why you want the barrier to entry high so that not any Nimrod can go ahead and run. But I also see how it could be problematic because the people that run are people that might have other intentions. They might have ulterior motives to use the presidency to gain a certain level of control and power. I mean, we're looking at Elon Musk right now. And here's the thing. I don't hate Elon Musk. I dislike how he runs X, and that's a whole other conversation. I do think that Doge is good for having some accountability on the U.S. government. But I would say he's probably one of the most powerful men in the world now, and he's not getting a paycheck. He's just using Doge and in the White House to kind of exert his power. So that's where you can kind of run into issues where these very rich and wealthy people are able to align themselves with the government, just donate $300 million. Bam, now you're de facto vice president of the United States, and you're involved in all these high-end meetings. And, it's also important to note that Elon Musk doesn't even have a clearance. He couldn't get a clearance because he uses drugs. So, I'm very, my thing is I'm objective. Like, even if I like someone, like I don't hate Elon Musk, but I am critical of a lot of the things he does. I've even been critical on some of the things that Trump does, but I can see why having this high barrier to entry from a financial standpoint can put people like billionaires, these tech oligarchs, in where they aren't even conservatives in the first place, which is MAGA's been infiltrated by tech bros.
Who should be in?
Outside of the tech bros?
Yeah.
We need hardcore nationalists. Guys that only care about America. Guys that are America first for real. Guys that would die for this country. The guys that...
like Bongino.
Yeah.
Like
Bongino's great. They're great. I disagree with them on Israel. That's my only disagreement, as with many Republicans and conservatives.
I think that's the new vaccine.
Israel?
Talking about anything Israel right now is the new, don't say it.
Yeah, you get banned for it.
So what is their take on it? Let's try to get banned.
Yeah, well, okay. So
I don't know what, like, I'm not going to lose anything if I'm banned. I got a lot of people think that like I'm an influencer, and I'm like, guys, I just get online sometimes. I have businesses. Mm-hmm. Yes, social media helps the businesses.
Absolutely.
But listen, I'm not trying to get banned, but I want to know your opinion on Israel. So hopefully it doesn't offend anybody. What is your opinion, and what is his?
Okay. Well, every politician of any real consequence in the United States basically supports Israel. And I think that's extremely problematic, because Israel is a foreign nation that doesn't really give us any strategic benefit. They're a parasitic country, and they've created a lot of problems for us. They've kept us in endless forever wars in the Middle East. And whether it was us invading Iraq or the billions upon billions of dollars we give them to wage war, they're currently killing tens of thousands of innocent people right now with our dollars. I think it's problematic. And I think anyone that truly is an America firster needs to understand that we can't have our government occupied by a foreign nation. I find it absolutely ridiculous that we have lobbying groups like AIPAC who are able to donate money to our politicians and influence our foreign policy. Israel runs our foreign policy, and the biggest issue I have is we can't even talk about it. This is one of the things that gets you nuked off YouTube. This is what got me demonetized on YouTube, was talking about this and Zionist control of this country. So it's problematic. I think if they're going to be involved in our government and they want to lobby and everything, cool. You guys need to go ahead and register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, under FARA. And that's precisely what got John F. Kennedy killed. They want to declassify these John F. Kennedy files. They want to declassify the Epstein files. Well, Epstein was a spy for Israel, right? Let's call a spade a spade. John F. Kennedy, Israel, they wanted him gone. And I find it interesting.
Why do you think?
Oh, why do I think? Okay, so...
Well, I don't get too deep into the studies. I just chalk it off as, you never know. Because,
Sure.
you never know, bro.
Absolutely.
From what I hear, J. Edgar Hoover was involved.
Yes.
The vice president got him knocked off.
So I'll go through it. So here's the thing with John F. Kennedy. Multiple factions wanted him dead. Italian mafia, Israeli intelligence, and...
Is that the Mossad?
The Mossad, yeah. Well, back then, the Mossad, or one of their the IDF, whatever it may be, because they had so many different organizations like Haganah, Irgun, Stern Gang, etc. They all work together. But yeah, the mafia, the CIA, and Israeli intelligence. So I'll kind of go through quickly why each faction wanted him gone. So the mafia wanted him gone because they had helped him win the election by stealing the state of Illinois and rigging the election there against Nixon. It was a very tight race. John F. Kennedy's father, I think Joe Kennedy, had promised the mafia, look, get my son in. We're not going to bother you guys. You guys can keep making money, in the shadows like you guys have done through the Prohibition era. We won't mess with you. But what ended up happening when John F. Kennedy came in, he put his brother, RFK, as the attorney general. And he's not corrupt. What did he do? He went right after the mafia. He brought them in to testify. He pretty much unveiled La Cosa Nostra to the American public in the 60s. And this was problematic because that went against what they had promised. So the mafia wanted him gone for that because he had appointed RFK as the attorney general. The CIA wanted Kennedy gone because Kennedy thought the CIA was a rogue organization that didn't have much oversight. They were trying to do reckless things that might put us in a predicament. And he didn't like it, whether it was the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis. He felt as though the CIA was getting way too big for its britches, and he wanted to smash it into 1,000 pieces, as he famously said. And then finally, the third part, which no one ever talks about to include the JFK movie, which I'll tell you in a second why they didn't include this section, was the Zionist angle. A lot of people don't know that back then, Israel had stolen a bunch of uranium from the United States. There was a factory in Pennsylvania, in Apollo, Pennsylvania, called NUMEC. And this factory was manufacturing a bunch of very high enriched uranium. And what was going on was the Jewish mafia, the Italian mafia, as well as a bunch of Israeli Zionists worked together to smuggle this uranium from the United States through South America, destined for what was back then mandatory British Palestine. And Kennedy got aware of this because a CIA guy went out to Dimona where they were doing a nuclear testing and tested the soil. And they found out that there was uranium in the soil, and the only place that was producing uranium that was that rich was the United States. So he was able to figure out, okay, these guys literally are trying to test for nukes. And Kennedy was very anti-war and anti-nuclear proliferation. So he tells Ben-Gurion, the prime minister, hey, we're going to start doing nuclear inspections. I suspect that you guys have nuclear weapons and you guys are testing them. And Ben-Gurion, knowing this, makes a fake control lab, right, for nukes. And he sends the inspectors there. And Kennedy finds out that it was BS, and he is obviously livid. So he's writing a bunch of letters going back and forth with Ben-Gurion saying, look, if you guys don't allow us to inspect your nuclear capabilities, we're going to stop giving you guys aid. Now, for Israel, this was a big problem. This is a relatively new nation. They had been formed maybe less than 20 years ago. This is the early 60s. 63, I think, to be exact, and they were created in 1948. So, and they're surrounded by enemies. The whole Arab world didn't want them there, and they had just got their independence. So they needed the nuclear weapon to deter the Arab world from attacking them. So they needed Kennedy gone because he was standing directly in their way of being able to protect themselves in their eyes by telling them to get rid of the nuclear weapons. Then on top of that, his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, was trying to get the Zionist Council, the AZC, the American Zionist Council, which is now AIPAC, to register under FARA, which would mean they need to disclose the money that they're giving the politicians, where it's coming from. Well, why is that problematic? It's problematic because the way they were getting the funding was organized crime with the Jews and the Italians, like Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, etc., Murder Inc. They were, along with the Sunborn Institute, which was a conglomerate of wealthy Jewish businessmen. They're working together, sending money and funding the politicians. So they didn't want where that money was coming from to be disclosed, because then it would reveal that we have Jewish gangsters working alongside Jewish businessmen and Jewish government officials to support Israel. So they needed Kennedy gone for that. So FARA registration and the nuclear bomb is why. And then as soon as Kennedy gets killed, Lyndon B. Johnson is sworn in. He stops the nuclear inspections, stops the FARA registration, gives them billions upon billions of dollars, and we've had unequivocal support of Israel ever since.
Said like you were there yourself. See, that's what I always wonder, and that's why I don't get into it, because, dude, you sound very believable. And I bet you if I went and did the research you probably have, I'd probably come to the same conclusion, because you're investigating. Most people aren't.
Yeah.
Most people are just listening. Like right now I'll go home and I'll be like, babe, you know that frickin', and I'll say it like what you just said was fact, even though it may or may not be.
It is. And I'll tell you real quick.
But you say it like it is.
It is, and I'll tell you why. This all comes from declassified documents. These are all from declassified documents.
Did you get any access as Homeland Security?
Well, no, it's been declassified for a while.
So this is all public information?
It's all public. It's in the Kennedy files. It's you can find all this stuff, and there's many books that were written about this.
So why is nobody held accountable?
That's a good question, because Israel's never held accountable.
Yeah, but why?
Because they run this country. And
you saw Trump over there on the Wailing Wall with the yarmulke on.
Yep.
So
they control our politicians. They control our finance. They control everything.
Again, how and why?
Okay. Where do you want to start?
Well, just with the bottom line.
Okay, let's start with the movie industry. So JFK, the movie, famous movie released in 1991 with by Oliver Stone. That movie covers the JFK assassination. It's probably the most famous film regarding the situation. But the movie only covers the CIA and mafia angle, but it purposely leaves out the Israeli angle. And once you do some research on who was responsible for the film, you find out that Oliver Stone is Jewish. His real last name is Silverstein. You find out that the guy that funded the film was a guy named Arnon Milchan. Arnon Milchan is a Zionist Jew billionaire who was a spy. He went on Israeli television and admitted that he worked for the Mossad to keep away the information on their nuclear capability. And, when you start digging and you start connecting dots and you figure out, wait, okay, that's why the Zionist angle was left out of the most influential movie that covers this very controversial topic. The guy that funded it had an allegiance to Israel, and that's very problematic.
Yeah, they don't want anybody talking smack.
Exactly. So this is why...
But how do you know that? How do people know that?
Which part? The Arnon Milchan or?
Yeah,
yeah, you can literally go if you look up Arnon Milchan and look at the movies that he's funded. JFK from 1991 is one of them.
Have you seen the movie called? I think it's called The Heartland Doctors.
I've never seen it. No.
Well, when JFK was shot, he was sent. He was sent to Heartland. I believe it's Heartland Hospital.
Oh yes,
in Dallas, Texas.
Yep.
And the doctors, some of them are still living. And if you read their reports and you listen, this is out on, I believe, Netflix. You watch the movie. These doctors are saying when he came in, he had a hole here, he had a hole here. Yep. This was gone, that was gone. By the time he landed at Bethesda, Maryland base, or Bethesda, Maryland's naval base, this was sewn on, and this was patched up, and the caskets were empty. And you watch this movie, and it's clear and evident something was fishy.
Yeah, so I've had on some of the best Kennedy researchers in the world on my show. We've done like deep dives on this, on how this went down. But to keep it simple, Oswald was not the shooter.
He was the patsy.
He was a patsy, absolutely.
Who do you think the shooter was?
I named them actually in one of my videos, but I can tell you the guys that actually killed him was a guy named David Ferry and another guy named Jack Valenti. They were the ones on the grassy knoll.
What's the driver? Have you ever seen the one where the driver just goes?
Oh
pop?
Yeah, no, that's not it.
Is that AI generated?
It's not AI generated, but that wasn't the guy that killed him. Jack Valenti hit the killing shot.
But did you see that? What I'm talking about? I've
seen that video before. Yeah,
because to me,
the Zapruder film is what you're referring to.
Yeah, but when you see this, right, you see his head go this way. You know, I don't know velocity, and I'm not a scientist, but you would think if he got shot here, his head goes that way.
Yeah, well,
and it looked like the driver shot him right in the face, and then as soon as the driver shot him in the face, Jackie is jumping out of the vehicle, just like I would if I just saw the driver shoot my husband in the face. I'm out of there.
Yeah, she was what she actually was doing was
picking up a brain.
The Secret Service agent that hopped in the back was a guy named Clint Hill. He just died like last week. But what she was doing, actually, she was trying to scoop his brain matter and bring it back.
What I heard once.
That's why she was going to the back to try to get it.
Why do you think that's the case?
Why do I think that's the case? He got shot in the front. The kill shots, he got hit in the throat because he goes like this. If you watch the Zapruder film, he goes like this. And then like a second or two later, you see like, boom, he gets hit and then the brain's blown out in the back.
Why would she collect his brain?
You know, I mean, she loved her husband, I guess. She didn't want him to look like that. I mean, they were once he got to the hospital, you know, they obviously covered his face. It just looks bad, but
his face wasn't blasted.
No, well, I mean, the back of his head. I mean,
the
body was like,
wide open.
It was pretty messed up. But the point is that there were multiple entities that wanted him gone. The story that they told us, the Warren Commission is bullshit. Everybody knows is bullshit. Hell, even Anna Paulina Luna, who's responsible for this declassification task force, that's a joke. That's all the conversation. But even she said that there were more than one shooter. And I think they did another hearing in the 70s, and they even said it was a conspiracy. So, but I've done a whole deep dive on this with a guy named Corey Hughes, really good, Ryan Dawson. These are some of the best Kennedy researchers, and they did all this stuff. And I've looked at the declassified documents. I've seen them all, and yeah, man, those three entities absolutely want him gone. And there's an unmistakable Israeli link to the JFK assassination, but they don't want you to know that because, well, they wield an enormous amount of power in the United States and influence.
Why do you think that is, though? What's the bottom line?
Why do they have the influence?
Yeah.
Or I think it's just human nature.
Do they got pictures of somebody?
Well, funny story. You mentioned Hoover earlier, right? Hoover, a lot of people don't know this, he was actually homosexual and he was a cross-dresser. The reason why he didn't go after the mafia for so long throughout his entire tenure through the FBI is because he had compromising photos of him in heels, and his deputy director was his partner. They used to hook up, and back then in the 60s, you could lose your clearance for being gay. So he obviously wanted to keep that hush hush. But that is a big reason why the FBI never went after the mafia during Hoover's tenure.
Well, again, I know there's something to it. I just don't know what it is, but it is a little bit peculiar.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strategy that's been done a lot, like with blackmail. I mean, this is exactly what Epstein did, where he would compromise powerful and influential people and say, look, we got you here dead to rights on you sleeping with this, little girl, and we're going to use it against you, or little boy, and we're going to use it against you. And I mean, the way, because there's so much confusion in this. So the way Epstein did this, if we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, we need to talk about Les Wexner and a guy named Brunel, Jean-Luc Brunel, I think is his name. And obviously Ghislaine Maxwell.
Is that the owner of Comet Pizza?
Brunel?
Yeah, the John Luke or whatever.
No, he was a model recruiter is what he did. Let me make sure. I'm going to double check because I don't want to give you the.
You were already getting banned. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, Jean.
Hey, by the way, the guest's view is 100% entirely his own, and I do not necessarily. I'm joking.
Jean-Luc Brunel is his name. So, and he was basically like a French model scout. So, this is the way it worked. This is how Epstein did what he did. I'm going to give an abbreviated version so I don't go too long and rant on. So Ghislaine Maxwell was a environmentalist. She'd go to the UN, talk about the ocean and pollution, etc. Obviously, she'd make a lot of friends there, build connections, and they would go to parties. And Epstein was also doing the same thing on his side. Les Wexner basically funded him. He was his main guy. Les Wexner is a Jewish Zionist billionaire, very affluent, owns Victoria's Secret and a bunch of other companies. And what Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell would do is they'd go to these parties through her network. And what they would do is they would meet these rich people and they'd bring Victoria's Secret models with them a lot of times that Brunel had recruited. And Epstein goes to these parties. He's like the talk of the town. He's the cool guy. Who's this billionaire guy with this attractive woman, Maxwell, and, bringing all these women. And he was able to build friends very quickly. And what he would do is he'd be like, hey, look, you want to hang out with us? You should come see my place sometime in my ranch in Nevada, my home in West Palm Beach, my, penthouse in New York City. He had a home in France. So these people would come and hang out with him, and there would be these underage girls there, and sometimes known, sometimes unbeknown to them. And the way he recruited these girls was, you got to go back to 2005, 2006. And what you'll find out is that in West Palm Beach, he was basically recruiting this network of high school girls to come to his house and give him massages. So you get one or two, like, hey, do you have any friends that you go to school with? I'll pay you $200 to $300 every time you guys come here. And, they're high school kids in the early 2000s. They're like, oh yeah, sure. So he ended up getting like 5 to 10 of these girls working for him, where they were giving him and his clients massages, and he'd be traveling around with them all over the country to his ranch in New Mexico, West Palm Beach, etc. That's how the case ended up becoming federal. But that is essentially what he did. So builds social proof, builds trust by going to these parties, has a network, then invites them to his place, compromises them with these young girls that are there, and then boom, he's got you. Blackmail is the way to go. And he would blackmail everybody so that he always maintained leverage. And once he was arrested, they pretty much knew this guy needs to die. And, everyone knows Epstein didn't kill himself.
And then the files that are just released, all redacted anyway. So why release files that are all redacted?
So I literally just made a video on this. So here's the problem. They released the files, right? They released 200 pages roughly. Attorney General Pam Bondi, said, we're going to release the first set tomorrow. And she releases them and it's like 200 pages. Most of them are flight manifests, right? Well, the reason why that's problematic is there's a federal criminal case against him. It was back in like 2019 when the FBI arrested him and they raided his house. Like, we don't care about these flight logs. Like, we've already had this stuff, right? This stuff has already been out there. And then on top of that, it's not even complete because that's just the flight logs from like one pilot. He had multiple pilots and he would use helicopters. And a lot of the times he'd also drive people in, right? If you're someone that's like trying to do some nefarious activity with underage individuals, you want less documentation. So did everyone that was on the plane abuse kids? No. Did some of them? Of course. But that's just like, that's not the full picture. And it's like almost like obfuscating from the real point, which is we need to focus on the individuals that were involved with Brunel and Wexner. You can't talk about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell unless you're going to talk about Brunel and Les Wexner. And for some odd reason, those names are always left out.
Then that means that all the people that are currently now in possession of those files must be in the same mindset of protecting whoever's on it.
Well, yes, and that's a part of the reason. But the reason why I think that they don't want to expose it is because it would make the Israeli lobby look really bad. A lot of his clients were Zionist Jews. And the case, most of the stuff is going to be in the New York case file. And I find it funny that, Attorney General Pam Bondi, who oversees the Southern District of New York, the United States Attorney's Office there, and the FBI, because as the Attorney General, she's the chief law enforcement officer in the land, How would you not have the foresight to know he was arrested by the FBI back in like 2018, 2019? So all that stuff is discoverable because he obviously had a lawyer. Ghislaine Maxwell stuff was all discoverable. She went to trial. Like that stuff should have been ready to go before you even sworn in because it's all discoverable. And you oversee that office. You oversee it. So like, how could you say, oh, I need this stuff now? It's like, you should have known that from before. This is a public criminal case. Like, how the hell did you not know this? So, and she's a former prosecutor. She used to be AG in the state of Florida. So I don't know what's going on there. I think she definitely fumbled the declassification or putting out the files by kind of jumping the gun, and she should have known better and had this stuff ready to go from before.
So at the end of the day, though, it's because the Israeli government or the Zionist Jews are secretly controlling the world.
It's not that they're secretly controlling the world.
Sounds like it.
But the
United States is the most powerful country in the world, no?
It is.
And you're saying that they run it.
They do. They absolutely do.
Well, then that would be, then they're running it.
Yeah, they are. I would say more people are waking up, so it's not so secret before. I think October 7th has done a lot to reveal this, and I can kind of go through it. So prior to October 7th.
Now, just for the record, aren't you Muslim?
Yeah, I grew up in a Muslim household, but I'm not religious.
But wouldn't someone say, well, that's because you're Muslim?
Sure, they can say that, and I'd say, well, I'm not really religious. I'm just, speaking from a very, because when I talk about Zionism, I'm not even really referring even to religion. I'm referring more to the political ideology and the state of Israel mostly. I haven't even gotten into the religion stuff, but, sure, people might say that, but, regardless, if facts are facts, regardless of who says them.
The shit that you say I've heard and I've seen and I'm like, well, that is a little peculiar. Mm-hmm. I just never know because I don't know, bro. And when I'm listening to you, in my mind, I'm thinking he seems like he knows, but you probably don't know either. You just believe you've chosen one side or the other because nobody knows, bro.
Well, here's the thing.
Like nobody knows.
You can Google the names I gave and you'll see everything lines up. Because like I said, I have like a lot of the stuff that I'm referring to. I'm condensing a lot of information that I've gotten from documentaries, books, looking at declassified documents, speaking with some of the best researchers in this realm. So I'm condensing quite a bit of it. But, it's absolutely true. Like, for example, I was talking about Israel's nuclear program. So funny story. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, I think it's Robert Maxwell, if I'm not mistaken, was a spy for the Mossad. He owned a media company. And this guy named Mordecai Vanunu was a whistleblower. And what he found out was that Israel had nuclear capability. He took roughly 50 pictures and he wanted to sell the pictures. He ended up selling the pictures to an intermediary that worked with Robert Maxwell, who owned this media company. So he finds out, hey, this Mordecai Vanunu guy, who's also Jewish, by the way, he has these pictures of the nuclear program. Like, you guys got to do something. So they get a Mossad agent, a female, and she lures him to Italy. And he goes there thinking he's going to get his dick sucked. The next thing you know, some guys in yarmulkes jump out of a truck and fucking grab him, and they kidnap him, and they take him back to Israel. And he ended up getting in a secret court, was in prison for 10 years. I think he got released. He's out now. But that's what ended up happening, where this guy was a whistleblower in a nuclear program, and they did a honey trap and caught him, honeypot and got him. So, to answer the question, going back to the whole thing, there's an enormous amount of influence that Israel wields. And they've been able to do it for a very long time with not much consequence because since they run a lot of the media and the censorship regime, they're able to ban people that have these viewpoints.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say, go ahead.
Well, that's where I was driving because, dude, they are basically in charge of the narrative.
They absolutely
so
are.
When anybody comes around like you that seems to know what he's talking about and he has these things, nobody hears about it. Dude, this whole thing might just get clipped and snipped and nobody even hears this whole segment now. And that's what I was driving at because I think that's why nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to the state of Tennessee and you try to do business with the government, a state agency of any kind, there's an agreement that you sign. And in that agreement, it says that you will not talk bad or protest or do anything against Israel.
Yep. In Texas too. It's in a bunch of states, 30 plus states, and there's 9 others that are trying to ratify that. Yep.
Yeah, to me, I'm thinking, how does that make any sense whatsoever? If you want a government contract in the state of Tennessee and you're a contractor or a subcontractor for the state,
yep.
that you're agreeing not to say anything bad about or do anything against nation. Israel.
It gets even better. Trump signed an executive order that mandates that foreign students that come to the United States, that college students, any of them that protest against Israel or criticize Zionism or Netanyahu or whatever is going on in Gaza, they will get immediately deported. And I was like, wow, now to be transparent here, I'm very anti-immigration. I think we need an immigration moratorium, but I find it incredible that a foreign national can come, go to school here, criticize the president, criticize our government, no one cares. But if
burn flags,
you burn flags, exactly, because it's protected under the First Amendment, which I'm a free speech absolutist / maximalist. But if they talk about Benjamin Netanyahu or Israel, they can get deported. I find that absolutely ridiculous. So we have, and here's where it gets even worse. So this term anti-Semitism is defined by something called the International Holocaust Remembrance Association, IHRA or something like that. But the point of the matter is it's an international organization. And this definition of anti-Semitism is constantly changing. They call it the hate that mutates, right? It used to be saying anything along the lines of Jews control the world, Jews control all the money, they control the media. That would be considered anti-Semitism. But now they're changing it where if you criticize the government of Israel, you criticize Zionism, or you criticize what's going on in Gaza, that's also considered anti-Semitism. So we have an ambiguous term that's being used in American legislation to justify the censorship of American citizens or people in the United States, which is completely antithetical to our First Amendment. So, and no other country gets this benefit. It's absolutely ludicrous. So that is why they censor. And I will say this real quick, because more people are waking up. When October 7th happened, everyone rallied behind Israel. Right? They're like, they kidnapped 200 plus of their people, 2,000 people got killed. This is messed up. Like, we're going to support Israel. Jordan Peterson famously said, give them hell, Netanyahu, right? And everyone was rallying behind Israel. But once people started seeing them indiscriminately bombing buildings, killing innocent kids, if you go on Twitter and you see like brains blown out and everything else like that, you're like, what the hell is going on here? Then Israel says, well, we have a right to defend ourselves and Hamas is hiding in tunnels. Well, if Hamas is hiding in tunnels, why are you guys bombing the infrastructure above ground? You guys have the capability of doing direct attacks where Israel literally has some of the best military because we give them a lot of their weapons, where they can send a missile in, it'll hit a building and it'll take out a floor, but the building stays intact. They have precise engineering when it comes to military power. They ran an operation, and I'm sure you guys probably saw this in the news. Back in September, they detonated a bunch of pagers and cell phones and beepers and killed a bunch of Hezbollah guys in Lebanon. A lot of people don't know. They had those explosives and those devices for 10 years. For 10 years, they had these devices out there with bombs in them dormant, and they were able to detonate them over 2 different days simultaneously, right? Then you look at a guy named Ismail Haniyeh who got assassinated in Tehran, Iran. They did a precise explosion in his room in the direct quarter that killed him and his bodyguard. So they have I would say the Mossad and Unit 8200 and all their intelligence, Shin Bet, they have some of the best intelligence agencies in the world. I would say they would rival ours. And for them to be indiscriminately bombing people and killing as many people as they have, right? Meanwhile, Hamas is underground and they have the capability of doing these precision strikes. It begs the question, like, what was your intention the whole time? And then Trump does a press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu and he's like, yeah, we're going to take over Gaza. And then it's like, oh, now the light bulb's on. That was the intention from the beginning. Make the place inhabitable, kick them out, force them to Jordan and Egypt because we give them quite a bit of aid and they're going to do what we say, Jordan and Egypt, because we pay them to play nice with Israel. That's why they're Israeli allies. And the whole point was to level the place so that we can go ahead and build a smart city on Gaza, because people don't know Gaza is like on beautiful real estate where it's beachfront. It could be another Dubai. And there's a lot of competition in the Middle East right now to create a tourist haven. Saudi Arabia saw how profitable the Dubai is to the Western world. And they're like, damn, we want to do that too. And Saudi Arabia's been building a city up. And then I think for Israel and maybe the United States as well, we're looking at it like this could be a cash cow for tourism. So I think that was the intention the whole time, was to blow the place up, make it inhabitable, and force the Palestinians to leave. But going back to the whole October 7th thing, so they had everyone's support on October 7th, right? Then you find out that there were no beheaded babies, no babies in ovens. You find out that they did something called the Hannibal directive. Yoav Gallant literally admitted this like 3 weeks ago. He's like our equivalent of Pete Hegseth. He was the defense minister for Israel when all of this happened. And the Hannibal directive is a directive where Israel allows the murder of their own people, or soldiers or citizens, to avoid them being captured by Hamas or any other, Palestinian militant group. And the reason why is because what ends up happening, like we're seeing now with the ceasefire, it ends up becoming an asymmetrical trade where they're giving thousands of Palestinians back to just get a couple of Israelis. So they look at it like, this is a diplomatic nightmare. This is a geopolitical nightmare. It's better to just kill them so we don't have to deal with this later on. Now, obviously, that's terrible because I dislike the death of anyone. I've been a staunch supporter or a staunch critic of anyone that takes down the posters of the Israelis that were kidnapped. Like, just because I don't like the government doesn't mean that Israelis should be dying or being kidnapped. So any these weirdo Palestinian motherfuckers that like rip the posters off, you're a weirdo. But with that said, where was I going with this? October 7th. So you find out that they ran the Hannibal directive and they ended up, the IDF killed a lot of their own people, the tanks, the Apache helicopters, because when you look at the damage, like especially with the cars at the music festival, Hamas doesn't have that capability. We're talking about paramilitary idiots that have World War II weaponry. They can't blow up the cars like that. So a lot of Israelis were actually killed by IDF. So, and then you do the numbers. So first they reported 2,000 people died. Then they reported 1,200 people died. Well, then you do the numbers. You figure out that roughly 300 to 400 of those people that died were IDF. Enemy combatants. Terrible when people lose their life, but it's a war, right? Then you find out that the Hannibal directive was implemented that day. And we know that a bunch of them got killed from the tanks and the kibbutzes and then blown up with the Apache helicopters. So how many people did Hamas really kill? And keep in mind, when they come in, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get as many hostages as possible. Why? Because they know for every one hostage they take, they can get hundreds of Palestinians back. So when you just like do some critical thinking and you look at what's going on here and you find out the Hannibal directive and then they inflated the numbers, then there's no pictures or proof of the beheaded babies, you find out that Israel used this to rage farm so that they can go ahead and justify their unprecedented levels of aggression where they've killed 100,000 plus Palestinians. So my thing is I look at it like, I don't want to pay tax dollars to a nation that doesn't even listen to us and kills innocent people and then make us look bad, because now the United States, since we've been running cover for Israel for so long, we look like clowns on the world stage. Everyone in the UN, the whole international community has condemned Benjamin Netanyahu. There's an arrest warrant out for him right now, him and Yoav Golan, and there's also arrest warrants for Yahya Sinwar and Ishmael Haniyeh, but they got killed. So I understand Israel's perspective when they say we have a right to defend ourselves. However, this has been a ridiculous retaliation where now you're just killing innocent people. And then to make it even worse, as they've been doing these prisoner exchanges the past couple of weeks, like you can see the Hamas fighters there. Like they're all there with their fucking masks on and shit. It's like, how many of them have you actually killed? So, and that was their mission. We're going to eradicate Hamas. So it's all very problematic. And then I haven't even gotten into the axis of resistance and how Benjamin Netanyahu has used October 7th to wage an entire war in the Middle East, which I could definitely talk about that. But yeah.
Do you talk about this stuff on your political podcast?
Yeah, I do cover quite a bit of this. So I cover other stuff too, but the Middle East.
Now I see why you're on Rumble though.
Yeah, I talk about it on YouTube too, but like what I'll do is like sometimes I'll cut to Rumble, then come back when I talk about something like this, and I just
you tell hey, go to Rumble, guys.
Yeah, because I like live stream it. I'll live stream on YouTube and on Rumble, and if I talk about anything controversial, I'll switch.
Yeah, I've already seen 100 people say, "Oh, this one's getting taken down for sure," and it may. I mean, I don't know, but this is the type of thing I think people need to hear. That's why I believe in free speech. If someone doesn't like what you're saying, then don't listen. They don't have to listen. This is America, but you should have the right to say it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you should have to go to Rumble to do it. But listen, that's why maybe everyone should go to Rumble.
Yeah, man. I think if you want real political takes, Rumble is the place to be, or
just different opinions.
Yeah, because this view that I have is been censored for a very long time, and that comes back to the October 7th thing. So once the international community seeing how Israel was killing all these people and getting away with it, that's when people started to wake up and realize like, wait, hold on. How are these guys getting away with killing all these innocent people? Then people started to wake up and realize, holy crap, our politicians are controlled by them. Wow. And then you figure out what AIPAC is. You figure out what the ADL is. You figure out that a lot of these tech heads are Zionist Jews. You figure out no wonder this stuff hasn't been out, So there's been so much disinformation and so much censorship on this topic. And I mean, to go back real quick with the Middle East, I think it's very important people look up something called the Clean Break Memo. Back in the mid 90s, I think roughly 1996, a bunch of neocons, Wolfowitz, Pearl, etc., these guys wrote a letter a strategy, right, to secure Israel. And what it basically mandated was you need to destabilize a bunch of Middle Eastern countries: Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Sudan, Morocco, Egypt, etc. All these different Middle Eastern countries, right? And effectively what's been done is all these countries have been destabilized either through us paying them, like Jordan and Egypt, and they just play ball, in Morocco or whatever, or through war, like Sudan, where Israel and the United States were funding the rebels, which ended up splitting Sudan in half, or Syria, like where we got the rebels in there and they got Bashar al-Assad out of there, or Lebanon, where he waged the Pager attack. And the only country that's left now is Iran. And the reason why I say all this is that was the objective from the beginning. 9/11, right? And that's a whole other can of worms there. But 9/11 was a justification to wage war in the Middle East for the benefit of Israel. And I'm not saying that we weren't attacked by terrorists on that day. We absolutely were. Al-Qaeda was involved in that. Osama bin Laden and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed absolutely were involved in 9/11. However, just like the JFK situation, they always leave out the Israeli angle. On September 11th, there were 5 guys there dancing and flicking cigarettes, lighters, and celebrating and saying, "Woo, yeah," as the towers were being hit. So this woman, this vigilant woman, thank God to her, sees these guys dancing. She thinks they're Arabs, actually. And she's like, why are these guys celebrating? They're in New Jersey overlooking it. Why are these guys celebrating the towers getting hit? This is like the worst terrorist attack in human history. What's going on? So she calls the police, suspicious. The police catch up to these guys. They're in a van. Urban Transport Systems, I think, is the name of the van. Urban Moving Systems. They catch him in the van. As soon as the guy gets pulled over, "Oh, we're not Palestinian. We're Israelis. We're your friends. We're not your enemy." So cops like, that's kind of weird. So they call the FBI. FBI comes in and brings these guys in, asks them a bunch of questions, give them polygraph exams. 2 of them failed the polygraph exam when asked the question, "Are you Israeli intelligence?" They do record checks, figure out 2 of them have ties to Israeli intelligence. And not only that, they all had flights ready to leave the United States for the next day. And then it gets even better. They find out that they work at this moving company that I mentioned before, Urban Moving Systems or Urban Transport Systems. I can't remember the exact name, but it's a moving company. They do a search warrant at that place in New Jersey. When they raid it, they find terabytes upon terabytes of information. They're like, what the hell? The guy that owns it is a dude named Dominic Suter. "Hey, Dominic, we need you to come in. We got some questions for you." "Oh, yeah, sure, I'll come in." Where does he go? Flees to Israel. Gone. Next day. Then you find out that these Israelis spend about 60 to 70 days in immigration custody, and then they get deported. They didn't go to Guantanamo Bay. They didn't get interviewed by our military or by our CIA or by anybody. They went back to Israel. And then they ask them on an Israeli talk show. This is all out there, by the way. Declassified documents and everything. There's FBI 203s, or no, not 203s. It's FBI reports, basically, that show this. But they admit that they had foreknowledge that the towers were going to get hit. And then it gets even better. You find out that these guys were following the terrorists as they were moving throughout the United States, getting ready to conduct this attack. And it's kind of an ingenious idea. Disguise yourself as a moving company. The moving company was getting funding by Israeli intelligence, by the way. They did the numbers and figured out where they were getting the money from. And you could follow these terrorists around without being noticed, because I think it was Mohammed Atta, one of the head guys, was living in Florida for a period of time. And who was living next to him? A couple of these dancing Israelis that in Miami Beach. So they were keeping tabs on these guys the whole time. And then on top of that, the CIA had warned the Bush administration on several occasions, "Hey, attack is imminent. Attack is imminent. Bin Laden's going to fly planes into tower." Like, that's their strategy, blah, blah, blah. And then we have Israeli intelligence also happening. So I think they knew it was going to happen. They let it happen. And then bam, what happens? We're invading Iraq. We're going after Saddam Hussein. He has no weapons of mass destruction. And he had nothing to do. Bin Laden and Saddam Hussein actually hate each other. Many people don't know this, that when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia's sovereignty was being challenged, Osama bin Laden offered the royal family to fight on their behalf because he had won the war against the Russians in the 80s in Afghanistan. And the royal family said, "No, we don't need your help. The United States is going to protect us." This pissed Osama off because he's like, "Why the hell are we letting Kafirs and foreigners fight on Arab land for our country? This is bullshit." So the Saudi Arabian government doesn't like criticism, right? So they say, "Fuck you." They take his citizenship away and they send him to Sudan. And he hides there in the 90s. So the Mujahideen, which had fought the Russians, turns into Al-Qaeda. So why the hell did we go to Iraq when Osama bin Laden wanted to fight Saddam Hussein for the benefit of Saudi Arabia? It doesn't make sense. And then you find out we didn't have weapons of mass destruction. And then who was the main guy that said we should go to Iraq? I'll never forget. Benjamin Netanyahu, he's there in Congress. Yeah, if we take out Saddam, it's going to create positive reverberations all across the region. It cost us billions upon billions of dollars. 1 million people died. We didn't get any benefit from the Iraq war, but Israel definitely did. They get 80% of their oil from Iraq. So whenever you start following the money, you start following the clean break memo, you start looking at what's going on, there's even more rabbit holes, right? I haven't even gotten into the part where, a guy named Larry Silverstein bought the buildings 2 or 3 months before the towers got hit and took out this insane terrorism policy that no one had ever known. And then miraculously on 9/11, he's not there, as well as like a bunch of other Jewish people. So, hey man, when there's smoke, there's fire, right?
What do you do about it? Like, what can someone normally, like a normal person do?
Good question. I think it's important that the American public be educated on this stuff and vote accordingly and, understand that we are an occupied government from a foreign government, and that's problematic. And I think we need to make AIPAC register. This isn't an attack on Jews. I don't have a problem with Jews. I have a bunch of them on my team. But I do think that the state of Israel doesn't get held accountable for a lot of their political decisions. And I don't like the fact that they drive our foreign policy and they get us into forever wars.
But that is also the same. We feel the same about our government officials.
As far as
they're not held accountable either.
Yeah, they aren't. A lot of the times they aren't. But a lot of the times when we get into these wars, especially in the Middle East, it's for the benefit of Israel.
Yeah.
Because they have an insane lobby. I mean, you look at someone like Myron Gaines, she gave Trump $100 million. Crazy. And it gets even better because her husband, Sheldon Adelson, who was like this casino magnate guy that made a bunch of money, he campaigned to get this guy named Jonathan Pollard out of jail. Jonathan Pollard, for those that don't know, is the worst spy in American history. He sold all of our secrets to Israel and Russia, and it really messed us up. And he got, I think, a life sentence. But what ended up happening was Benjamin Netanyahu had these tapes on Bill Clinton, pressured him with the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Thankfully, Bill didn't bend. But Trump ended up giving this guy, Jonathan Pollard, a pardon. And in 2020, he gets on a private jet that Sheldon and Adelson owned, and he comes to Israel, and he's met at the tarmac by Benjamin Netanyahu. How is it that we have one of the worst spies in American history that stole our secrets, that sold to the Russians, getting met on the tarmac by our greatest allies leader? Incredible. And the American public a lot of times doesn't know this. I think if the American public knew this, they might question our greatest ally. Even
if they all did, though, I don't think anything would happen.
I think it would create awareness where people would say, you know what, we need to make AIPAC register. We need to get rid of these guys that have an Israel first policy, because our foreign policy right now is Israel first. And I think any American that's red-blooded, a patriot, a nationalist, you need to know what the problem is first before we can go ahead and say America first. All these guys that say America first, but then at the same side are saying, oh, we got to protect Israel. You're not America first, because America first means America only. And if we're only going to care about the United States, that means we need to preserve our money. We need to preserve our image to the world. And we shouldn't be behind killing a bunch of innocent people and, supporting this ethno-apartheid state.
Nah, there should have been bombs the whole time, but then no one would have been able to hear you. Yeah, dude, well put, well said. I mean, I wish I knew as much and went as deep as you. I need to do more research, but I wouldn't try to debate any of it. To me, I'd almost add to it. Sure. Why would you have to swear that you won't talk shit about the Israeli government when you do a contract with the United States, Tennessee? It's a state of the union. Why? What has that got to do with anything?
It's incredible, dude. No other foreign country has the level of influence that they have. They're literally legislating stuff to stop our free speech for a foreign nation. You can talk shit about Trump all day, but if you talk shit about Netanyahu, anti-Semitism. And they use this term anti-Semitism to censor you, to make you look like a conspiracy theorist or whatever. But everything I said, you can look it up. There's declassified FBI documents on the dancing Israelis that show the interviews and them failing the polygraph. There's declassified documents on Numek and how the uranium was being stolen. And then I haven't even talked about the World War II surplus weaponry that they stole to create the state of Israel. So it's all out there. It's just that this type of information gets heavily suppressed. So that's why not many people know about it.
Well, dude, I appreciate you coming in. And folks, as always, I'm bringing you top-rated badasses that freaking do their homework. You may not always appreciate them, but guess what? I do. So until next time, keep it real.